Just concluded this year's NATO summit, and the consensus among the members was it was a great success. It's especially momentous because it represented the 75th year, the most important military defense alliance in the world's history of the world. We should never forget that NATO grew out of the wreckage of World War II, the most destructive war in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. But Putin thought it was the mother home of Russia.
What?
The capital would fall in less than a week.
No, he didn't.
The Ukrainian people,
shut the fuck
backed
up,
by a coalition to help build, stopped them. Today, Kyiv still stands, and NATO stands stronger.
Dude, they've lost
than it has ever been.
600,000 Ukrainians.
During the week of this summit,
their country is devastated.
Is the world safer with NATO?
Fuck no.
Are you safer? Is your family safer?
No.
I believe the American people know. The answer to all those questions is yes.
You're a fucking idiot.
And I believe.
What concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president. Let's start there.
Say Vice President Trump?
Number one.
What did he? Is he
Fact
drunk?
Is that the consideration,
or is he just dying?
Is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again. Secondly,
you're going to beat him in 2020.
The idea,
you said.
I served in the Senate a long time.
Yeah, you said Vice President Trump. What the fuck?
The idea that running for office,
he might die right now.
About the ticket.
He's about to croak.
It's not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent.
He's got Parkinson's, right?
I mean, he has lower numbers than I have later in the campaign. So there's a long way to go.
He leans in and starts to whisper.
And so,
like a creepy old man.
I'm just going to keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We've got more work to finish. There's so much, we've made so much progress. Think about what we are economically relative to the rest of the world.
Yeah, his Trump is going to be his vice president, Rad Dad. I didn't know that.
We got more to go. Working class people still need help. Corporate greed is still at large. Prices and corporate profits have doubled since the pandemic. They're coming down.
Corporate greed is still at large.
Thank you. Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference?
What?
Have you seen a more successful conference? What do you think?
It's just mumbling, folks. He's slurring his speech so bad.
At the very end, I said, Putin. I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky. And then I added 5 other names. Look, guys, the idea anybody suggests that
what was the question? What was the question?
Had an incredibly successful conference. Look, folks, this is.
Look, guys. Look, folks. Look.
Well.
Look. Anyway,
I thought it was a successful conference.
Anytime he just doesn't know what to say, he just says, "Look, guys." Well, anyway.
Next one. My dad was a well-read, decent guy. I don't remember much trickling down on his kitchen table. Middle-class people. And working class people.
Your dad took a piss on the kitchen table? What are you talking about? Where are you
going
going with this?
Delaware has more corporations registered in Delaware than every other state in the nation combined.
Oh, Lord, dude, this guy is so tough to listen to.
Corporate profits. It's time things get back in order a little bit.
My ears are bleeding.
It's time, for example, if I'm reelected, we're going to make sure that rents are
painful,
kept at 5% increase in corporate rents for apartments and the like and homes. That I've been
he always stutters when he says corporate, like he doesn't want to. He knows who he's talking to.
I know. Remember how I got so roundly criticized for being so pro-union, not labor, union. Well, guess what? I've been the most pro-union labor president in history.
He's still saying he's been the most pro-union labor president in history.
When unions do better, everybody does better.
Oh my God!
Everybody does better.
This is creepy.
And we talk about
why
how,
does he do that?
Example,
he needs to get a new thing.
Remember when we talked about getting the computer chip industry back in the United States?
Lowering into the mic and then creepily talking to the mic it's not working.
So my generic point is that the idea.
Your geriatric point, yes, please get to it.
Continue to build and grow the economy, make it fair. The poor have a shot, the wealthy do well.
Who shat on the poor, Mr. President?
Vice President Kamala Harris would be ready to serve on day one. Can you elaborate on that? What is it about her attributes and her accomplishments over the last 4 years that make her ready to serve on day one if necessary?
I wouldn't have picked her unless I thought she was qualified to be president. From the very beginning, I made no bones about that.
He made no bones.
She was qualified to be president. That's why I picked her.
None of that malarkey. His pick for vice president was boneless.
Financial Times.
Like a boneless chicken.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presidency is the most straining job in the world, and it's 24/7. How can you say you'll be up for that next year, in 2 years, in 4 years, given the limits you've acknowledged that you have today?
Yeah. Are you going to be
limits I
alive in
acknowledge
2
I have?
years, Mr. President, in other words?
There's been reporting that you've acknowledged that you need to go to bed earlier and your evening around 8.
That's not true.
You're sundowning, Mr. President.
What I said was, instead of my
I reject the premise of
every
your
day
question,
starting
reporter.
at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more. And I said, for example, the 8, 7, 6 stuff, instead of starting a fundraiser at 9 o'clock, start at 8 o'clock. People get to go home by 10 o'clock. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about.
Okay,
If you look at my
Grandpa.
schedule since I made that.
Yeah, we know you
stupid
need to be
mistake
at bed by 10 and with your
campaign,
warm milk.
I mean,
Leader of the free
my
world,
schedule
folks.
has been- I've done. Where's Trump been? Riding around in his golf cart, filling out his scorecard before he hits the ball. He's done virtually nothing. And I have, I don't know how many. Don't hold me to it. Roughly 20 major events. Someone with thousands of people showing up. And so, I just think it's better.
He's still talking about his crowds.
I always have
He's like
inclination.
he's doing a
when I was
Trump.
just to keep going, not stop. I just gotta just pace myself a little more. Pace myself. I'm catching hell from my wife for that. Anyway,
Somebody get this man a coffin.
we've allowed Zelensky to use American weapons in the near term, in the near or abroad, into Russia. Whether or not he should be attacked. For example, should Zelensky, he's not. If he had the capacity to strike, and we're making a day-to-day basis on what they should and shouldn't go, how far they should go in. That's a logical thing to do. Second question related to,
What the fuck was that answer?
Sir, how can you reassure the American people that you won't have more bad nights, whether they be on a debate stage or on some matter of foreign policy?
the best way to assure them is the way I assure myself.
Oh,
and
God.
that is, am I getting the job done?
No.
Am I getting the job done?
No.
Can you name me somebody who's
Emphatically
got
no.
more major piece of legislation passed in 3.5 years?
For corporations?
Created 2,000 jobs just last week. So if I slow down, I can't
When they
get
say
the job
create
done.
jobs,
That's
you got to
a sign
remember, he means
that I
create
should-
profits.
Elections
He's
in the
created
US
so many
have
jobs, I need to work a
consequences
second
around
one to
the
pay my
world.
rent. Exactly.
And there's a lot of concern that Donald Trump may weaken NATO, stop supporting Ukraine.
What kind of a
or
world do
push
we live in where
Ukraine
Trump is threatening to
to
weaken
give up
NATO and our Democratic
territories to
president
Russia?
is promising to
correct.
strengthen
And
it?
do you think that Europe will be left on its own if Donald Trump wins the election? And what's your advice
No.
to European leaders to prepare for possible US disengagement?
I think, how can I say this without,
I don't think he's going to answer the
Sounds
question.
too
What do you guys?
self-serving.
I got 15 on it.
I'm not having any of my
Oh, God, this is
European
awful.
allies come up to me and say, Joe, don't run. What I hear them say is, you've got to win. You can't let this guy come forward. It could be a disaster.
We live in a corporate duopoly,
policy's
folks.
never
Nothing's
been
going to
strong.
fundamentally change.
And he seems to have an affinity to people who are authoritarian. That worries, as I tell you from Poland, that worries Europe.
This message is
That
for
worries
President
Poland.
Xi.
And nobody,
Fire
including
when
people
ready.
in Poland, think that if he wins in Ukraine, he's going to stop in Ukraine. That's going to be the end of it. And so what I can say is, I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job, to make sure that Ukraine does not fall, that Ukraine succeeds, that the European alliance stays strong.
Remember,
No one
they're
was
not
talking
even
about
allowing Ukraine to enter NATO. In fact, the head of NATO has told Zelensky that if he wants to join Ukraine, he better defeat Russia. They have no. We're selling Ukraine down the river. You know,
Finland. I remember talking to Putin and when right after
they've lost 600,000 Ukrainian soldiers. That's amazing.
got elected in Geneva, and he was talking about what we should do. We couldn't be in Eastern Europe, etc. And I said, you're looking for the Finlandization of Ukraine. I said, you're going to get the NATOization of Finland in my office.
What's wrong about the Finlandization of Ukraine? That Ukraine would not be in NATO.
I invited
What's wrong with that?
him to the Oval Office. We sat down and talked. He said he wanted to join NATO. Could I help? And I did. It wasn't automatic. And then I got a call from the Swedes.
Oh no.
Beg your pardon?
He forgot what he was saying, so he's like, what were you saying, though?
And so Finland joined NATO. 800-mile border is a significant, and they're already allies.
It's really not that
They weren't part of
significant.
NATO. And you heard I think you heard, maybe, I can't recall what he said in public in our
There's the mini
closed meeting,
stroke.
but he wouldn't mind it being repeated. He said, we decided in Finland, the people of Finland decided they had to be part of NATO. It was in our interest because of the joint ability to be together, to dissuade any attack on Finland. And the same thing with Sweden. It took a lot of selling to some folks, particularly
Literally no one is
Turkey and
concerned that
other
Russia will
places,
attack
to
Finland.
agree to the expansion.
This is a complete
But it expanded.
lie.
And we're a hell of a lot stronger because of it. We're more secure because of it. And by the way, I was able to get 50 other nations. 50, 50.
Let's go.
We were able to bring about a coalition between
What about the other
of Europe
140?
and Asia, Japan and South Korea. I just met with.
It's amazing what kind of pull you have when you're the world superpower, right?
Between Australia, New Zealand, Japan,
Biden, the
South
great man
Korea,
in history,
the United States.
single-handedly.
We're making the world safer. And
He's
stronger.
such a bad diplomat,
Because
dude.
we have
He's
to
so
deal
awful.
with the new arrangement that exists in the world. The Cold War is over.
No way he has
Post-war
4
era
years
is
left
over.
in him. I know. I
is
predict
going to
he's
replace
dead
it?
within 2 years.
And I respect.
And if he's not dead in 2 years,
I have a pretty good idea what that
Never mind.
should be. I've convinced a lot of people to follow it. We're just going to get stronger.
The world is way closer to nuclear war than it was 4 years ago.
Over 90 hours since being vice president all the way through, for real. And by the way, I
For
handled
real,
all my
for real.
notes.
On God, no cap.
And so, for example,
This shit
we're in a
sucks,
situation
man.
where
I don't
and
like
we've
this.
reestablished
I don't
direct
like this
contact
man.
with China. Well,
Where's
we set
John
up a new
Wilkes
mechanism.
Booth when you need him?
Direct line between she and me.
She and me?
Our military has direct access to one another and they contact one another when we have a problem. Is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate the kind of ability to produce their own weapon systems? Not just for themselves, but to be able to generate that. It's the same.
Yeah, we're always concerned about how they're going to generate their weapon
They didn't get
systems.
the weapons, but then they
We
went
need to
North
make money
Korea.
off that. Remember, we have
gonna
a
be-
war economy, but we're definitely not concerned with them growing their own food. I mean, that is they're not allowed to do that, but they should definitely get their weapon systems all up to speed, you know, because we need to keep on with this war. Remember that the United States survives with war, with forever wars.
In a position where the West is going to become the industrial base for it to be able to build the ability to have all the defensive weapons that we need. That was the
Always
discussion.
concerned. Thank you, machine politician for the military-industrial complex genocide, Joe Biden. Thank you so much.
Deal with them now
Absolutely
and 3
disgusting.
years from now.
Every
Look,
president since Reagan has been Reagan,
Yeah.
you know?
Like I said, I'm dealing with she right now.
Who
I'm in
is
direct
she?
contact with him.
What's her name?
I have.
Why don't you tell
good
us her
reasons,
name?
But I understand the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin unless Putin's ready to change his behavior. And the idea, look, Putin's got a
A
problem.
little bird in his throat.
First of all,
Putin has a
in
problem. Let's
this
see. What is it?
war that he is supposedly have won. By the way, I think
Cope.
they've not been very successful. They've caused horrible damage, loss of life, but they've also lost over 350,000 troops, military.
I don't think
Killed
that that's
and wounded.
true. That's a disputed number. I don't know if we should believe that he's saying that Russia has lost 350,000 troops. I've heard it more to be around 80,000, which is still significant. Ukraine has lost 600,000 soldiers.
If we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend read Putin's speech after they moved in, what it was all about in Kyiv. It wasn't about just, anyway, read what his objective is.
You didn't even finish what I want to know. What did the speech say? Anyway, not going to go into it.
Anyway, but so
Anyway.
I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who
Because
wants.
as far as I know, there's no historical evidence that suggests that Putin was trying to conquer all of Ukraine. And a point that is raised by a lot of geopolitical analysts, whom I respect, say that if that were the case, why would Russia send in an invading force of not more than 180,000 soldiers when it would take literally millions and millions of soldiers to conquer all of Ukraine? And meanwhile, Putin has never suggested that he wanted to conquer Ukraine or bring the Soviet. I mean, we know that Biden's going to obviously basically be an extension of the State Department and, all this United States propaganda about Putin and Russia's intentions. But if you take a closer look at the historical record, it's actually the exact opposite. It's the United States that has been the belligerent here. And I'm going to pull a Biden and just say, anyway, we don't have to go into all of that, but it's just obviously he is going to always he's always going to say that, Putin is the evil psychopathic, dictator hell-bent on world domination. And it's not borne out by the facts, I guess is my point.
Wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk.
And remember that Russia and Ukraine had a preliminary ceasefire agreement, like a tentative ceasefire agreement that was in the works within a month of the February 2022 invasion. And by all accounts, by all reasonable accounts, Russia was forcing Ukraine to come to the negotiating table. And Russia wanted an agreement from Ukraine that Ukraine would not join NATO and would cease the integration of NATO into its country. Because remember, another thing that we're missing out of Biden's rhetoric is that on September 1st, 2021, the White House issued a policy statement which in it called Ukraine a, quote, NATO-enhanced opportunities partner, and repeated the propaganda of Ukraine having the right to defend itself and be independent. Of course, if you understand the history of Ukraine, even just going back, which I don't have much of, but I know U.S. involvement, intervention in Ukrainian politics. And since 2014, the CIA in partnership with the, the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy or Development, something along those lines. Anyway, it's basically a CIA proxy, CIA entity. They basically set up or engineer coups, and that's what happened in 2014 with Ukraine. And so you're so morally pious because you want Ukrainian independence. Well, you didn't really care about Ukrainian independence, since 2014 up until 2022, because that country is a United States proxy. It's it was democratically elected leader was ousted, and Petro Poroshenko was installed by the CIA. Well, my point is that Ukraine was not a formal member of NATO, but NATO still treated it very, as was the policy document that stated that it was a special opportunities partner. And what that amounts to is training Ukrainian troops, conducting military exercises, funding weapons, intelligence, and think about how Russia would respond to that. It represents, as Russia has stated, it represents an existential threat to its survival. It's basically, as people have pointed out, I think quite correctly, the United States is in a war with Russia. We might not be pulling the trigger, although I think sometimes we are, but we're supplying all the intelligence, we're supplying the weaponry. I mean, Ukraine could not be carrying on this war without the United States. The same thing with Israel and the genocide in Gaza. So imagine Russia parking nukes in Cuba. I mean, in the 60s that actually did happen, and it almost led to a nuclear war. But even before the Cuban Missile Crisis, the United States invaded Cuba. I think it's a compelling argument to give the analogy that if Russia was meddling in anywhere near the Western Hemisphere, how would the United States react? We know we have our Monroe Doctrine to fulfill, which basically stated that we must control the Western Hemisphere. Latin America belongs to the United States and the United States alone. No one's going to be interfering in our backyard, and empires, do empire shit. And so, yeah, I just think that we need to be mindful of that. Okay.
That didn't go very far. So my point is, I'm prepared to talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination.
You can't even talk to your grandchildren properly. I mean, you can't talk. That's the problem. Look at how far ahead somebody like Vladimir Putin is as a statesman, how far ahead he is from a Joe Biden.
There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me.
Or Xi Jinping.
Because they're not sure where this all goes.
Xi
Look
and me.
what's happened in Asia. We've slowed down China's reach. But there's a lot of work to do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly.
When he says he doesn't take it
Some
lightly, he's
from
talking about
NPR.
the shid in his pant leg.
The first time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk, and her assistant was Rabin sitting next to me.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
how far back
those
I
two
go.
war
I know
criminals.
Israel well, and I support Israel. But this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution. And so what was able to be done in terms
The
of
two-state
the
solution.
plan I put together was it would be a process for a two-state solution. And we get the Arab nations to
Always. Like,
particularly
you
from
cannot
Egypt.
fucking joke about this. Satire is dead. He's still... how many times have I pointed this out and people have pointed out? Always a process. Always a path to peace. Always. Always a two-state solution in the near future. Still talking about it. Nothing has changed. Literally, they haven't budged an inch. In 9 months into an ongoing genocide, they haven't budged an inch from their rhetoric. Still the same rabid support for the genocidal policies of the Israeli government. Absolutely atrocious, right? I mean, what can you say? I mean, this is so grotesque. This fucking guy, man. This fucking guy.
all the way to Saudi Arabia to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza.
Because we're not worried about the Gazan people, okay? Remember, it's about Saudi Arabia and it's about Egypt. It's about remember, famously, they want to normalize the relationship between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Okay, Israel and Saudi Arabia are sort of contentious, and the United States needs to smooth that over. But fuck the people in Palestine. So hopefully some good will come out of all of this situation where we have so many Palestinians dead. And that is that Israel will finally normalize its relations with Saudi Arabia.
Without Israeli forces staying in Gaza and 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great...
Give this man a standing
tragedy and
ovation.
damage.
He's
But
not using the
remember what happened.
2,000-pound bombs. Give this man a standing O. I don't even think that's true, okay? I think Israel's been using a whole plethora of 2,000-pound bombs still.
Happened when look at the numbers. And
Still looking for that ceasefire. Look at the numbers. Yeah, look at the numbers. 200,000 or thereabouts dead.
my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people.
What
here,
about your
too.
numbers in the
Anyway,
Gaza Strip, sir? The fuck are you talking about?
Candidacy in 2020, you referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate.
And I think, I won't put words in anybody's mouth.
You can't. You can't even put
Most
words in your own
presidential
mouth.
Historians give me credit
Ba-dum-ching.
for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that. Get major pieces of
I love
legislation
the
passed.
hyperbole here.
And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress, to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen.
Look, even the
I'm gonna
fucking
finish.
subtitles are having a
Get
go
that
at it,
finished.
man. They're having a rough time.
tomorrow-
Majorgization.
had-
Combining words
Didn't
together.
inherit what I did, and we just moved
His brain's
things
like,
along.
fuck that. That's too many syllables. Let's just
Anyway.
move on to the next one right now.
It's going to change. It's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me see them out.
That's the problem, though, Joe Biden. We have seen you out there. It's not looking good.
Longest time it was, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway.
And anyway, of course, as he's like literally calling on pre-scripted questions, right?
And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events from Wisconsin to North Carolina to, anyway. Great
A
people
good
moving
non
far away.
sequitur can save you the
People already
trouble
there.
of not
Yeah,
having
look,
to
there's-
actually
yes.
answer a
We have
question
the
with
most
any
extensive
substance.
campaign organization.
A little butt.
Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea.
Troll guns,
we're
not
sitting around,
girls.
this is commonest in the world. We're sitting around. More
Holy
children are killed by the bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing?
Oh
Got a
my
candidate
God,
say,
what
promise
the
saying, "All right,
fuck
don't
was
worry,
that?"
I'm not going to do anything. I'm
It's
not
like
gonna do
his
anything."
shot of
We got a Supreme Court. that is
amphetamines finally
what you
kicked
might
in just
call the most
randomly.
conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous.
Dude, we gotta
So
clip
much
that.
we
That
can do
was
still.
amazing.
I'm determined to get it done. Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a
Oh
neurologist.
my God.
In each case, as recently
Oh
as
my
February.
God.
And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the
Oh,
boot.
his foot's not working, guys. That's what it is.
But I'm
His
good.
brain's fine.
I'm tested every
If
single
there's one
day.
thing we need to worry about
I'm
Joe
going
Biden,
to
it's his
pass
left
every
foot,
decisions I make every day.
not his left brain.
You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. The fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff and I said, I'm going to go to South Korea, we're going to get the chip. What are you doing?
Oh, he's still
I'm
talking
gonna
about the
get
computer chips in South
Japan
Korea.
and Korea.
He
back
he
together.
defied his own staff,
Since
and look
the
what he
having
did.
hostilities since the end of World War II. I'm going to move and see that we can expand it. You know,
He's expanding the military-industrial
Only thing
complex,
he
folks.
is help you with
Single-handedly.
wisdom if you pay attention.
That's his crowning achievement.
And so the point I'm making is, I think it's important that if the neurologist tells me he thinks I need another exam. And by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. Hadn't hidden a thing. Don't ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out. And every single day, I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it. No one's suggesting that to me now. And I'll ask you another question. No matter what I did, no one's going to be satisfied. Did you have 7 docs? Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times did you? So,
Yeah, why
I
do you
am
think
not
people are so
one of those
concerned
doctors
about it,
tell
Joe
me
Biden?
they
You've
should-
got the
should
nuclear
be
codes,
doing
motherfucker!
process. It's not going to happen.
Again,
Someone else?
his go-to.
Sure.
Lean in and whisper.
In their states.
What?
Look at the in-depth, and by the way,
Nobody likes
I
you.
think you'd all acknowledge, and you're
That's
all
what the
experts.
polls
I'm not being
say.
facetious about the president. You're experts on this stuff.
Don't ever talk about my dead son.
How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days? I can give you a series of polls where you have
I can give you serious
likely
apples.
voters, me versus Trump, where I win all the time.
The subtitles.
When the unlikely voters vote, he wins sometimes.
Holy
The bottom line
shit.
is all the polling data right now, which I think is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started.
How do you combat that criticism from
He's not gonna. Oh, I thought he was leaving.
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you,
Crushed it.
everybody.
Didn't
Thanks, everyone.
what? Listen to him? What are you talking to him? What are you saying? I don't. How is that an answer? That's what we just did. We listened to him. Do you have any response? That was not an answer. It's so Jover. Oh my god, dude, that was painful. Holy fuck, that was bad. You guys, I need a shot of tequila after that shit. Like, wow. That was so gross.
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Clinton sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. Obama gave the orders to do drone strikes.